On this day, exactly 1 year ago, I began collecting PS1 games. Being a Nintendo fanboy for most of my life, I finally caved and bought a PS1 because of all the great JRPGs it had. This video actually coincides with the 29th anniversary of the PS1, which I thought was pretty funny, as well as the 25th anniversary of one particular game in this pile. So, without further ado, let's get into the collection. Starting off with Rayman, the very first entry in Ubisoft's long-running series. This is also one of the few 2D platformers that was released on the PS1. Next we have the original Wild Arms, my personal favorite PS1 game. This isn't a typical RPG, it actually has more of a Western aesthetic as opposed to a medieval one, and it's definitely worth checking out. And of course, you can't have a PS1 collection without arguably the most iconic game on the console, Final Fantasy VII. This is the game that brought JRPGs into the mainstream outside of Japan. And if you don't have this, frankly your PS1 collection is incomplete. Next we have Final Fantasy Tactics, the first game in a spin-off series of tactical RPGs taking place in the Final Fantasy universe. Up next we have Saga Frontier. This is the very first game in the Saga series to drop the Final Fantasy Legend branding in the West. Next we have Mega Man Legends. Unfortunately, it's only the disc, but I was able to get a good deal on it because of that. This was also released on the Nintendo 64 as Mega Man 64, and it's sort of a weird action-adventure RPG hybrid type of thing. Up next is Xenogears, the first game in the long-running Xeno series. It's a bit of a pricey game, but it's definitely worth checking out if you can. Next we have Tekken 3, often considered to be the best fighting game on the PS1, and having played it I can definitely see why. Next we have the original Spyro the Dragon. What's funny is that when I bought this at a game store in Wallaceburg, the guy there gave me a discount for no other reason than there being a crack in the jewel case, which was easy enough to replace. Next we have Legend of Legaia, one of the lesser known RPGs for the PS1. It combines aspects of RPGs with that of a fighting game to create a rather interesting battle system. Next up we have Crash Bandicoot Warped, otherwise known as Crash Bandicoot 3. I figured that I'd pick this game up since it's usually considered to be the best one in the series. Next we have Final Fantasy VIII. As hinted towards earlier, this game is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary today. The Dreamcast also released on this day in North America. Can you guess which one sold better? Next we have Legend of Mana. This is the first game in the Mana series to not be released on a Nintendo system. I unfortunately don't have the manual, but I did receive it as an exchange for a game that wasn't working. Next we have Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, otherwise known as Gateway to Glimmer in Europe. This was the first game in the series that I played. Next we have Crash Team Racing. This is about the closest that the PS1 ever got to Mario Kart, though it also does have some elements that are similar to that of Diddy Kong Racing. Next we have the cult classic, The Legend of Dragoon. I actually bought this from a pawn shop that I frequent almost immediately after the game was sold to them, making it quite possibly the quickest turnaround for one of their products. We end off with the two most recent additions to my collection, which also just so happen to be the two newest PS1 games I have. Firstly, we have Spyro Year of the Dragon. And last but certainly not least, we have Final Fantasy IX, often considered to be one of the best games in the series. And there we have it. That's my entire PS1 collection, 18 games in all. There's still a few games that I'm looking for, such as Parasite Eve, Wild Arms 2, and even some more obscure stuff like the Grand Stream Saga. But so far I think I have a pretty solid selection here. That'll be all for now.